Um, I was just thinking that Kirtan was way too loud. Anybody else feel that way? It's just me? Just the three of us? Like in a line? Nobody else thought it was too loud? My ears hurt from it. Sometimes Kirtan is described especially in our medieval literature, as being tumultuous and thunderous. But Kirtan was always performed in a Kirtan mandap. Temples in India traditionally have a garbhagriha, kind of a sanctum sanctorum, which is the actual place where the deity sits. And there's a small area around that where priests can come and do the ritual, do the liturgy. But then this area here, where all of us are sitting, if that was the altars here, then this area here would have an open sky. It's a Kirtan mandap. It's an open air area where devotees gather and do Kirtan. And what that means is that if you're really loud, the fact that it's an open venue means the acoustics allow the really loud noises to escape and there's no reverberation. Do you guys follow this? When you get into a closed space like we have, the reverberation is much more intense and the decibel level goes up, and then you're supposed to calm down a bit. So then we can ask, why didn't these guys calm down when they were doing Kirtan, given it was such a closed environment? It was like painful. Even the players themselves raised their hand. Then they're the ones who were singing. I was behind the mic and it was like, I almost wanted to cover my ears, but I didn't want to be like offensive or something like that. What would prompt them to play so unnecessarily loud? Anybody?
I got louder when I saw you enter it.
Okay, so me. It's my fault. Yeah.
A desire to be heard.
A desire to be heard, okay, sure. Your parents didn't listen to you enough and you want to be able to express yourself. I mean, perhaps he got louder when I came in. I can't say for sure. I have a general theory. My general theory is that really loud kirtan is caused by an inordinate amount of sex desire. And I'm being literal. Testosterone, lust, sex desire, the desire for fame. It's really hard if you've ever boxed, if you've ever sparred. It's really hard to go light. It's relatively easy to wrestle light, but it's really hard to box light, because what usually happens amongst non-trained people is you say, let's go light, and what that means is you go light, but then I'll take advantage of the openings and angles that your lightness creates, and I'll throw heavier punches. Then the other person thinks, that was like, we were supposed to go light. That wasn't light, that was medium. Like one time I was boxing with my coach. And my coach is a professional fighter. He's also 250 pounds, and he fought as a professional fighter. So he's both way bigger than me, and he's also way more skilled than me. And we were doing we were sparring, but we were doing what's called dirty boxing. Who knows what dirty boxing is? It's when you rub your gloves in the mud. Dirty boxing is infighting. In boxing, it's illegal to clinch. But boxers are famous for clinching, and then when the ref separates them, they punch right at that moment. And they sometimes get in these little rabbit punches, these little short punches, hooks and uppercuts, generally speaking. Curved punches, but you're close to the person, and you do a little shoulder push, and then you hit them, and you clinch back up again. And there's a whole bunch of techniques that they're not enough to get you disqualified in a boxing match. Sometimes they'll get you warned, but they have a real pragmatic value, especially like in fighting, like straight up fighting. They have a real pragmatic value. And even in a boxing ring, they allow a less skilled opponent to equalize things, and it's just a skill you have to have. It's a little bit of wrestling mixed in with boxing. Mike Tyson was very good at this style of fighting. So we were practicing infighting or dirty boxing. So we were clinched up and throwing hooks and uppercuts and like that. Shoulder strikes and grabbing the back of the head and just different things you do. Underhooks and overhooks and all sorts of stuff. And so I was teeing off on my teacher. I was feeling really good. I was cracking them left and right, and I felt like I had some real power in my shots, and I was getting the upper hand on them, which was actually not the case. It was my naivete. And then he hit me with an uppercut and dropped me to one knee. Not hard enough to knock me out, but I actually saw stars, drop to one knee, and probably had like a light concussion afterwards. And so I mean, I don't know if you guys know what it's like to see stars, but then I dropped to one knee and I was like, whoa, and I was kind of woozy. And I looked at him, dazed and confused, like, why did you just drop me? And he goes, oh, I thought you wanted to throw heavy. You're hitting me in the face all heavy. I thought you wanted to up the ante. And I got it. I understood that we were supposed to go light, and I went heavy, and so then he matched my power, and that's what happened. When he matched my power, then he dropped me, because he's bigger and stronger and more technical and all that stuff. So sometimes Kirtan's a little bit like a boxing match where he plays the jump a little louder, then he's got to play the mridanga a little louder, then he's got to sing a little louder. Pretty soon they're all screaming bloody murder. That happens. But I think generally what it is that people are just, their ego gets the best of them, their lust and sexual energy gets the best of them, and they kind of just freak out in front of the mic and make a scene. I used to laugh with all of my monk friends how in the springtime in Europe so many devotees would release kirtan tapes. And I always said it was like a moose making their mating call in the springtime. All these kirtan tapes would come out with people crooning and singing really romantically and these very beautiful tunes, really showcasing their voices. And in a society of renunciates, we got all this time being spent buying expensive recording equipment and people really making sure that, they release the Kirtan CD with like their face on it, looking kind of stoic and sexy all in one. So these four guys here, the way they were doing Kirtan, I felt like it was just a lustathon. It takes restraint to move your face away from the mic, to soften the mridanga. We are unlike all the other musicians in the world, our tribe. And I mean like specifically the Gaudiya tribe, the Hare Krishna people. More than just our particular branch, but the Gaudiya family. 10, 20 million followers around the world. We're unique. If you look at Qawwali music, you look at other types of music, Drupad music, Carnatic music, you look at other styles of Indian classical music, semi-classical music, Middle Eastern styles of Kirtan, what have you. They'll do little harmonium solos and little flute solos, and they'll do little drum solos. We don't actually do that. We solo sometimes. You know how we solo sometimes? We chant a cappella without musical accompaniment. Because for us, the name of Krishna is the actual thing that we're doing when we do Kirtan. We're reciting the name of Krishna. And it is a spiritual activity. The music is an accoutrement that's designed to make it easier to chant and draw you in more to the chanting. But the music is always secondary and the chanting is primary. Strangely, past a certain volume, the chanting becomes like more difficult. Like it actually hurts your ears. It hurt my ears. It was so loud, it hurt my ears. So if it's hurting your ears, that could be the sign that I'm actually a demon. The Hare Krishna mantra is hurting my ears. I should be happy to have my eardrums burst hearing Krishna's name, and anything less than that shows my lack of faith. Oh, ye of little faith, trying to stop the kirtan of the holy name. Past a certain point, it just hurts my ears. I actually can't make out the mantra so well. In Qawwali music, Sufi music, really good Sufi music. In Qawwali music, the singer will finally get to a place where his voice cracks. He tries to sing until his voice actually gives out. And like there's a moment in the kirtan where he sings till his voice gives out and it scratches and cracks and everybody is happy. So it's not so much a problem of the singers doing amazing stuff with their voice and pushing it to the limits, but it's that barking amplification you get from the microphone that has to be watched out for. And if it's just too much, there's just an easy thing you do. Just move the mic away a little bit. Solves the problem. And the mridanga shouldn't be overwhelming because it's an accoutrement designed to help you hear the mantra better, feel the mantra better. So when the mridanga is too much, it takes away from the chanting. The jampa has the same effect. It's a really shrill percussion instrument, and it's especially in a closed space like this. It was thumping in my head how loud you were playing the jampa. Yeah. So we should learn something about cadence and dynamics, and we should get good at adjusting the kirtan and the musical accompaniment so that it doesn't obfuscate or get in the way of or opaque the mantra. Do you guys follow this? You really need to learn this lesson. It's like, usually people just have to get a little older. Their testosterone levels have to go down. Maybe they have a couple of kids or something like that, and then they can mellow out. But if you guys could learn this, it would be very valuable. And all of us need to learn this as well. Which is going to get to what I was thinking about talking about. This whole class is because I came in and you guys hurt my ears, so I thought of a class to springboard off of this, so I wouldn't just merely be chastising you guys. But I had another class planned, but your kirtan was just too loud and intense and deafening, and I forgot what I was going to talk about, and so now I'm talking about this. I have a couple of verses from the Gita I even thought of. Yat ahankaram ashritya. Yat ahankaram ashritya. Taking shelter of the idea that you are the doer. Ahankar means false ego. Literally, ahankar means ahamkar, I'm doing it. I'm the doer. So the word for false ego in Sanskrit, we have a real self with a real self-conception, and that would be your purified ego or your real ego. And your false ego would be when you start to identify things that you're not. What are we according to our tradition? We are servants of Krishna. Eternally, forever. We're servants of the divine, more generally. Then when you think you're something else, big or small, fat or skinny, tall or short, white or black, green or yellow, tall, young or old, American or European, whatever. When you start to think in those terms, that's your false ego. Temporary, divisive, categorization that divides people. So, yat ahankaram ashritya, taking shelter of this false ego, thinking you're the doer, thinking you're in charge, thinking it's all depending on you. Ya nayotsya iti manyase, you think, quote, I will not fight. Krishna's talking to Arjuna. Taking shelter of your ego, thinking you're in charge. You think, I will not fight. Mityaiva vyavyasayaste. Your determination will be misdirected. Your resolve will get misdirected. Your determination will become confounded. And prakrititvam niyoksyati. By your own nature, you'll be forced to fight. It's an interesting verse. If taking shelter of your ego, you think, I will not fight, then still your intelligence will get bewildered and you'll end up fighting anyway. It's a radical point, isn't it? This point creates a certain degree of determinism. It postulates a certain degree of determinism in the world. If you think, I won't fight, you'll end up being misdirected and you'll fight anyway. Essentially, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that you don't have the free will to choose not to fight. And then the next verse. Swabhava jena kaunteya nibbodha svena karmana. Born of your own nature. Born of your own nature and bound to your obligations, to your karma, to your activities. Kartum na ichasi yam mohat karishasi avashopitat. Even though you don't desire to, out of illusion, you will helplessly fight anyway. Do you follow this? So the verse says that if you egotistically think, I will not fight, then you'll still be misdirected and you'll fight anyway. Because you're ruled by your own nature, by your own obligations and duties. And so even though you don't want to, you'll still be forced to fight helplessly. So what's postulated here in these two verses of the Gita, probably more so than anywhere else in the whole Gita, is determinism. Hard determinism, absolute determinism, is you have no free will whatsoever, and everything you do is programmed by a force beyond you. Of course, that exonerates you of any moral responsibility. You no longer become a moral agent, somebody capable of free action. All the problems in the world become God's fault because God created the world how He created it. And really, any attempt at moralizing or coming up with rules and regulations of what should or shouldn't be fails because everybody's just acting as they're programmed. And there's no real right or wrong. Just like with animals. If you see animals doing something wrong, you don't try to, have a big long conversation with them and engage in cognitive therapy and you know what I mean? If you go to a dog park and you see one dog trying to mount another dog, maybe you'll shoo them off of each other, or you'll kick one of them or something like that. But there's no 911 phone call. There's some kind of crime being committed. You got to get the police involved, and they're going to interview everybody, question the law of consent and things like that, because they're animals and they're running on instinct, and so we actually don't think that they're responsible for their actions. You understand? Just like we have a farm, and on our farm we have cows that will never be killed. We'll get to live out their natural life. And on that farm where we protect animals at the animal sanctuary down in Escondido in northern San Diego, sometimes if the animals, every month they go into heat. And when animals go into heat, it's no joke. And so the mother will mount the daughter, or the daughter will mount the mother, and they kind of figure it out. Nobody thinks that this is incestuous or evil or something like that. It's just they've got their nature. They're ruled by their nature. Like you. Yeah, young bucks. Ruled by your nature. So I guess the point I wanted to make was that I guess there's 2 points I want to make. One point is that although they are cannon fodder for me tonight to make the point decided I wanted to make when I heard the Kirtan and how painful it was. We're all guilty of this. You take something beautiful and nice and you degenerate it. You dilapidate it. You defile it. You lessen it. You ruin it. It just depends on how bad it gets. But a lot of times we'll take wonderful things, good things, and we will mess them up. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? With our attitude. Do you know what I'm talking about? Let me give you some examples in case it's unclear. Food is a wonderful thing. It's this amazing phenomenon that it's just close enough to the sun and just far enough away and just enough water on the planet and the water cycle and and then food grows. I mean, it's just totally wild. You get a seed and you put the seed in the ground and you just water it and that's it. Strawberries come out. Like we have strawberries at the temple, they're just coming out. It's amazing. It's almost miraculous. You put one seed in and chard comes out. All you have to do is put water on it. You put another seed next to it and you put water on that one too. And then strawberries grow, like beautiful red strawberries. How does that even work? Grapes and all sorts of amazing stuff. Mulberries and lemons. And, there's all of them, you just put water on them and these amazing things come out. Then those things are nutritious. And they provide you with the nutrients that you require to live and sustain life. It's just nothing short of a miracle. But then you go and get an eating disorder. You have an unhealthy, you either have disordered eating or you have an actual eating disorder. You have a bad relationship with food. You binge, you get obese, or you don't eat enough. You get all spun out. This is a beautiful thing, wonderful thing is there, and you take a perfectly beautiful arrangement that you get to participate in, and you manage to mess it all up. Or you give some charity. Instead of giving the charity humbly, you start thinking, I'm better than everybody else because I gave more money or more time. Or you start hoping you'll get acknowledged for the charity you gave. And you take this wonderful opportunity to be magnanimous and generous, charitable, selfless, and you mess it up with this desire for recognition and desire to posture and feel superior to the people next to you. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you? If you don't, you're either extremely, extremely immature and underdeveloped, or you're being deceitful. Everybody does this with something. How smart you are, how educated you are, how wealthy you are, how good your family was, how mature you are, how young you are, how tall you are, how cool you are, what a good musician you are, how entrepreneurial you are. Some way or another, you take some of the borrowed plumes, the gifts you've been given, and you think they're yours and use them to judge other people and see them as less than you and see yourself as more than them and take too much credit and get too attached to them and go down a darker road than you have to. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Have you done this? in your life? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So, what these four men are guilty of just doing flagrantly, masturbating publicly. I'm going to bleed it out of you guys one way or the other. We're going to get this out of your system, and your kirtan's going to be melodious, controlled, and apropos next time I come in. What they did, even while doing kirtan, all of us are doing in different ways with different things. And they're also all great musicians. So usually you end up getting this way with something you're good at. Usually that's the way. If you're not good at something, usually you're pretty humble and you don't try to make a scene. But when you think you're really cool and everybody should be listening to you, then you spaz out. Like that's Ross. Ross is trying to become like these guys. He's kind of a, what do you call it? An exhibitionist in training. But he's new. He's just learning how to play harmonium and sing. And so if he was leading kirtan, he'd be singing very softly and respectfully because he's not so good. It's when people think they can croon, they can cackle real loud like a hyena, jackal. Then they start making a lot of noise. We're all guilty of this. And I guess the reason why I connected these two verses with this phenomenon was that in a lot of ways, what we get to choose isn't always what we do. You don't always get to choose what you do. There's a limit to your free will. You're born with a certain temperament, with certain proclivities. I mean, there's a lot of support for this when you look into epigenetics and genetics. That people are predisposed towards certain ways of thinking, towards certain activities. For instance, just to give an example, there is the Norwegian gender equity paradox. They've been trying in Norway, just the bastion of feminism and equal rights. They've been trying since the 70s to make men become nurses. And they've been trying since the 70s to make women become engineers. But 90% of nurses are women and 90% of engineers are men. And they've been bribing their population to try to change that number. And they've been unable to do it in almost 40 years. In 40 years since they started. Actually, I don't know if they're still doing it. There was a big expose on this maybe about 5-6 years ago. They might have stopped. But it was a whole thing. They were given funding and grants, but they just couldn't get men to be nurses and women to be engineers. They tried to figure out what it was. So they noticed that 9-month-old babies, the men would play with cars, the boys, little boys, and the girls would play with dolls. And so they postulated, okay, maybe it's just innate. You know, and being a nurse means you have to be able to look at faces and interact with people, and being an engineer means it's a little more abstract. And then people challenged that. And they said, no, we've programmed them even at the age of 9 months. And they did a counter, it's a poor experiment, they did a counter experiment where they swaddled 9-month-old boys in pink blankets and 9-month-old girls in blue blankets. And people would then say when they saw the baby, oh, you're so pretty to the boys who were swaddled in pink, and oh, you're so strong and you're so smart to the girls swaddled in blue blankets. Do you guys follow this? So they said, just see, we're programming them from even 9 months. It becomes an unfalsifiable hypothesis, and it's poor science. Two things aren't related necessarily. They didn't show any mechanism of relation between the two things. But anyway, they were able to, for lay people, muddy the water a bit. And then they went and did another experiment. And they took babies the day they were born, when their vision was still very poor, and they put right in front of their faces pictures of faces and pictures of machines. And the male children looked at the machines for longer, and the female children looked at the faces for longer. They went even further. They got amniotic fluid, and they could test the testosterone that the kids had in the amniotic fluid in the womb. And they found that the more testosterone was in that fluid, which means the more testosterone that was in that baby, the longer they would look at machines for. Actually, one of the scientists was from Cal State Long Beach, and the other one was from Cambridge, and it was Sacha Baron Cohen's brother, who's a famous geneticist, famous research scientist at Cambridge. I saw the name Baron Cohen. I was like, couldn't be. And I looked at him. Oh my God, they're brothers. That's wild. He was involved in the experiment. There was also a lady involved in the experiment. She did the really cool zinger. She said, "You think the hormones that course through your body, that are so powerful that they determine whether you have male or female genitalia, don't also have an effect on your brain?" He goes, "That's ridiculous." The woman said, "That's ridiculous. You think that the hormones, which are so powerful, they change your body, aren't powerful enough to also affect your mind?" And this was trying to argue against the idea that women and men were fundamentally, on a mental level, exactly the same. That there weren't any differences you could point out, and any differences that were there were societally constructed and were not innate. This was an attempt to disprove that premise. Of course, equality is different than exactly the same. Like, all men don't have to be exactly the same to all be considered men. So there'd be no reason why all humans would have to be exactly the same in order to be considered equal. Equality is a different concept than exactly the same. You follow? Anyway, so I guess you could choose to become an engineer if you weren't interested in engineering and suffer through it. But you'd find it a lot less satisfying, and you'd find it a lot less maintainable. And your quality of life would be deficient. And for most people, they would think, why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying this at all. There are powerful ways in which our nature, our obligations, are handed to us. You're born to a particular family, in a particular community, with particular responsibilities, with some good, some bad, some ugly. Everybody's got it. They got their hand they were dealt by the deck of life, and it's different for each person. Just the length of your limbs determines which weightlifting exercises you're going to be better at. Because of moment arms, fulcrums, where your muscles attach. They attach further down. You know, at the tendril attachments, which attach, tendons attach muscle to bone. If they're further down, they create a longer moment arm, and so it's more difficult to lift weights. And if it's shorter, then it's better. You have no control over this. I mean, you think you get in the NBA by hard work and sweat? You don't. You get in the NBA by A, winning the genetic lottery, and then B, putting hard work and sweat. You know, it's not like it doesn't automatically come. There's plenty of oafs that are, 6'9" or something like that. But there's many ways in which we have a certain hand we were dealt by the deck of life, and in a lot of ways, a happy life consists of coming to terms with that, being comfortable with that, and learning what your purpose is. Finding out what you're naturally good at, what you enjoy doing, how you can contribute meaningfully. It changes as you get older. There's some community responsibilities you have just because of the community we're born in. Our legal system acknowledges that. If you're born in the U.S., you're obliged to pay taxes, and register for the draft, and register for jury duty based on social contract theory. There's just certain things you're required to do. You have no choice in the matter. And then you get certain things given to you for free, like roads and school and education, and basic health care, food stamps if you need them, stuff like that. You give up certain rights and then you get certain rights, and that people decide that way above your pay grade. And you're just born into it. You have no choice in the matter, really. You're born out of the country. There's a whole another set of responsibilities and dispensations you get. You guys following us? I mean, just a couple 100 miles down the road, just across the border in Mexico, it's a whole different world. Interacting with the police across the border is so much more treacherous and dangerous than interacting with the police on this side of the border. But it's just somebody's born 20, 30 miles, you're born in San Diego, somebody's born 30 miles away from you. Just where they were born changes so much. We like to think romantically that you can be the Queen of England and a ballerina and a princess and Superman and a judge and a lawyer and a doctor. And it's just frankly not true. You can't do anything and everything. It's a myth. Hard work can cover some distance. Grit, will, but this idea, this American dream of like, I can do anything I set my mind to. It's what small children think. Grow up, and at some point you realize, actually, I can't do just anything. Even if I change everything right now, I'm that guy who went a whole long distance and had to start again later on in life. There's certain things you can do, but not anything. Like none of us can get in the NBA. Guarantee you. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. I'm going ahead and I'm throwing down the challenge horse. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. None of you will ever be in the NBA. I don't care what you do. Sorry. Half of you can't be in the NBA because you're women. So that's like, boom. Look at that. But even amongst all the men and the men who play basketball, none of you are going to make it. Guaranteed. I think one of the big discoveries of life is when a Roman Stoicist, I think it was Seneca, he said, when I was young, I tried to change the world. When I was clever, I tried to change the world. When I was young and clever, I tried to change the world. Now I'm old and wise, and I try to change myself. Viktor Frankl said the last vestige of human freedom that he discovered in Auschwitz was that you can't always control your environment, but you can control your reaction. You can control how you wish to respond. Marcus Aurelius, another famous Stoic, he said that your body never really belongs to you, it's always on loan. But your mind 100% belongs to you, and it's up to you what you do with it. Arjuna was going to have to fight one way or another. According to Krishna, the battle was necessary. And Arjuna was going to have to participate. You know, there's that famous story about the guy who was trying to dodge death. There was a guy came to the temple on a Saturday night, heard there was some good vegan food, and then as he was sitting in the Kirtan, which was too loud and obnoxious, he looked out the corner of his eye and he saw death sitting in the corner, staring right at him. And he thought, oh my God, death's here for me. And he pointed to himself, and death was like, yeah, you. Me and you. And he bolted and left. Jumped on a plane. Flew down to Mexico. Went down to Yucatan. Rented a car. Dodged the police. Got deep down in the jungle. Found a cave in the middle of the jungle. And hid in that cave from death. And we walked in the cave, death was sitting there. And death was like, whew. I was getting worried. I saw you up in Long Beach, and we had a date down here. I had no idea how you were going to make it. But you made it. Yogis, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you have a certain amount of breaths. So one of the reasons why they practice pranayama is to slow down your breath so you live for longer. That's their idea. I don't necessarily know that. I think you have a certain amount of breaths, and that's what it is. You just mechanically lengthen them out, and then you're going to live for longer. I'm not sure I roll with that. And of course, the death story is just fun. But I think there's truth to this idea. There are some things in life you're going to end up being enmeshed in and dealing with one way or another. We don't like to think, we're trained not to think so, especially in the U.S. If I was in China or India giving this lecture, in a culture which has familism, and by the way, that's a third of the world's population between those two countries, FYI. But if I was in a country that had believed in familism, which is most of the world, with the exception of Western Europe and the U.S., we have an individualist conception of the world, that I should do whatever I want to do and whatever makes me happy. It's very self-centered. Personal hedonic is kind of our program. It's personal pleasure, whatever makes you happy. When I joined the Hare Krishna movement, for example, some Indian people would always ask me, I lived in India for a number of years, Indian people would ask me, oh, what do your parents think? They're cool, but my move was always I don't care what my parents think. I'm doing this for me. What does it matter what my parents think? Aren't your parents upset about it? No, and if they were, then I would reject them. What right do they have to tell me what I should do? I don't think I'm unusual. I think that's mainly the way people are raised in the West. My parents taught me that. I can do anything I want to do, and it's none of their business. And once I turn 18, I can do anything I want. And their job is not to shame me or coerce me, just merely to support me. I grew up with this mentality. I was surprised to find out not everybody around the world thought this way. Most people in the world think I'm a member of a family, I'm a member of a tribe, I'm a member of a community. And I have responsibilities to these people, and it supersedes my own personal pleasure. And I should do what's best for the people I care about. I should think 7 generations ahead and buy dish soap. You guys get that one? And so, somebody finally did the math. And so, most people think in the world today do what their families want. Do what's best for their parents and grandparents and grandchildren, and see themselves as being a member of a family, a member of a tribe. And they make life decisions on that basis, and they're happy doing so, with a larger conception of self. So this class, to the majority of the world's population, they'd be like, yeah, and it would immediately, the whole family thing, their responsibilities. But it's a tough sell to people from the U.S. because, by and large, if you spend enough time in this country, we've indoctrinated you into our belief system, which is that it's just whatever you want to do. But it's actually not true. There's limitations. There's responsibilities. You're going to find yourself in situations where you have little control. I was just talking to a friend of mine who has cancer. And anyway, his liver's bleeding and he has to take medication to stop his liver from bleeding so he doesn't die. And it's a complicated thing. And they try to get him off the medication, but then he starts having problems. And so then they put him back on the medicine in an injectable form because the oral form has to pass through your kidneys and get processed. And so they had to get that medicine to him right away, so they had to inject him. And he looked on the injectables, and one of the injectables was porcine membrane mucosa. Do you guys know what that's a fancy word for? Porcine? What does porcine mean? Pork. That's right. Who said that? That's right. Porcine means from pork, which means from pigs. Membrane mucosa. So it's essentially the mucus from a pig's intestines is one of the ingredients in the injectable he has to take. So he hit me up today, a couple hours ago, and said, should I take it? I'm a vegan. I'm like hardcore. I read everything on everything. Like in the realm of vegans, I'm that guy. I'm like the capital V vegan. Every ingredient, on every supplement, on every medication, calling up the company, talking to the chemist, figuring out where it came from, figuring out what the parent material they synthesized it from was. I know it's synthetic. Yeah, but what was the organic parent material you used to synthesize it from? Coal. Okay, then we're good. Well, originally we used some like mouse cells. Ah, okay, then I'm not doing it. You follow? Because 50 years ago you used mouse cells to start the synthesizing process, and now I'm out. Petroleum I'm cool with, even though that's dead plants and animals mushed together over millions of years. It's far enough away where it doesn't freak me out. But I told him, I said, yeah, take it. Don't think about it, take it. I wrote to him, I feel like enmeshed. I feel now guilty. Like I'm going to get some, like I felt the weight of me writing to him. Take it. Then he wrote back to me and said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked you. And I said, no, it's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, when I tell you to take it, I'm not just lightly telling you to take it. I'm saying I'm feeling enmeshed and like it's going to compromise my own principles, but what can we do? You got 2 kids. You got a wife. You're dying of cancer. You don't take this medicine, you could bleed out over this. Who knows what the effects could be? And on Monday, you try to get some synthetic version of it. But over the weekend, because everything's closed up over the weekend, just take the injectables. Don't give it a second thought. Don't worry about it. This guy's an initiated Hare Krishna devotee. It's not like a small thing for him. I mean, think about it. He was actually thinking of not taking the medication he needs to take to not die because he didn't want to compromise his principles. And it was enough that it warranted texting his priest across the country to have somebody weigh in. That's how seriously he took it. But his arms tied, his hands are tied. This stuff happens in life. We should make our peace with the reality that we can't control everything. We should make our peace with the reality that we may have to do stuff just out of obligation, and we, by our genetics, by our community, by our obligations, we may end up not just living the life that we choose at every moment. And things may find us and we may react to them in certain ways, and that just might become part of our life package. And what we should spend more time focusing on is that we can always choose what our mentality is while we're operating. That's where the freedom lies. We can choose why we do something. And so essentially Krishna was telling Arjuna, I'm asking you to fight in a holy war, jihad. That's something Hare Krishnas have to get over. We have to deal with that. It's an interesting accusation that has at least some merit, at least it warrants a response. Krishna was telling Arjuna to fight in a battle. It was a holy war. And Arjuna was going to end up being forced to fight in the battle regardless. The famous saying is either Muhammad goes to the mountain or the mountain comes to Muhammad, meaning Muhammad went to the mountain, got inspired by Allah, and started writing the Quran. And so if Muhammad didn't make that journey, then the mountain was going to come to him. But somehow or other, he was going to have to go through certain things. You have to go through certain things in life. You're not born into this world with zero karma. Because you're not born in this world with zero karma, therefore, certain things are going to happen to you in life that you're going to have to contend with. Certain lessons have to be learned. And they don't all come easy. We should really focus on our attitude. If you have the right attitude, if you're detached, if you're looking to see the divine hand, if you're looking for the lessons to be learned, if you're looking to do the right thing for the right reason, you'll be able to glide through life much more successfully. You'll be able to meet those challenges, learn those lessons, act as you're obligated to, and do so with the right attitude, and it'll have the best possible effect on you. And even when you're caught in a tough situation, you'll be able to make the absolute best out of that circumstance and actually make it good by having the right mindset. Alternatively, you can take something perfectly lovely like Kirtan and you can mess it up a little bit. On the other side, you could even fight in a battle. And doing it with the right attitude, you won't cultivate hatred or envy or enmity. You'll actually become compassionate. One thing in life is to find out, it's like Mark Twain said, the 2 days, most important days of your life, the day you're born, the day you find out why. One thing is to find out what we were put on God's green earth to do, what our purpose is here, what our telos is, what our dharma is, what our raison d'etre is. It's like in every language. Every culture has a term for this. What our reason for existence is. One thing in life is to figure that one out. Then the other thing is to do it with the right attitude, with some humility, with some dignity, with some integrity, with some love, with some compassion, and ultimately do it as a service to the divine. That allows you to take any day and make it a sunny day. That allows you to carry sunshine in your pocket. Whether you get cancer, your loved one gets cancer, you have some reversals in life, you're going to carry sunshine in your pocket. Every day is going to be a sunny day. Alternatively, with a bad attitude, you can take the best hand and manage to mess it up. Throw away all your best cards and wind up with a whole lot of nothing. And so Krishna's point to Arjuna was, you can fight because I'm asking you to, and it will be your service to me. Or you can fight, motivated by your own nature, bewildered in a bad state, and then it's just going to be, it's the same thing. But one of them, you learn a lesson, you grow closer, and you do the same activity and actually move further away from the divine. You follow this? Does that make sense? All right, that was my message for today. If you watch us on Instagram, thank you very much. You guys want to stay on Facebook for a second? We'll have a little feedback. Give me some feedback.